welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 on Channels Television, coming to you live from Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. At least 10 people killed as Boko Haram terrorists attacked stranded passengers in the village of Auno near Maiduguri, Borno State capital, leaving about 18 vehicles burnt. A federal high court Abuja grants former Attorney General of the Federation, Muhammad Adoke, bail in the sum of 50 million naira on fresh money laundering charges filed by the EFCC. House of Representatives Committee questions insurance method adopted by the head of service of the Federation for MDAs. This action is unethical and goes against the Constitution. And Chinese President Xi Jinping makes rare public appearance amid new coronavirus outbreak as he visits health workers in Beijing treating infected patients. Plus, we'll have business, sports, news from the FCT, and of course, we'll head off to our studios in London in a little bit. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. So subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser. Or you can download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple, Android, Fire and Roku as well. Human rights activists and members of civil society groups are calling for an end to terrorism and insecurity in the country. A rally held in Lagos today to commemorate the 14th memorial of renowned activist Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti provided the perfect forum for them to voice their concerns. Some of those who spoke condemned the recent deregistration of some political parties, disobedience to court orders, and the pervasive insecurity in the country. They also laid a wreath in honor of Dr. Beko Ransom Kuti, who until his death was the chairman of the Committee for the Defense of Human Rights and president of the Campaign for Democracy. He died on February the 10th, 2006, at the age of 65 from complications arising from lung cancer. Well, let's cross over to Abuja now. And here's Ibrahim Adra. Ibrahim.
Hello, Ijoma. Good to see you and welcome to Abuja. 2030 is the year set by the United Nations for nations of the world to achieve. Now, 2030 is the year set by the United Nations for nations of the world to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, as adopted by all UN member states in 2015. With 10 years left for the attainment of the 17 goals on the agenda, tonight we kick off an assessment of Nigeria's path to achieving these SDG targets, beginning with goals 1, 2, and 10, which aim to tackle poverty, eliminate hunger, and reduce income inequalities. Notwithstanding the UN efforts to assist countries around the world to achieve these targets, a recent report by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, reveals that income inequality is on the rise.
Never save any money since 4 years, and where they make the business, because we they use the money do house rents, school fees, and feeding ourselves. We never make anything.
Meet Mrs. Victoria Uchechi. She fends for her 4 children with a profit of 2,000 naira she makes daily from her business. She represents a large number of Nigerians who struggle to make ends meet. A study by the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP, shows that more than 700 million people, or 10% of the world's population, still live in extreme poverty, surviving on less than $2 a day. For most people, having a job does not guarantee a decent living. 8% of employed workers and their families worldwide lived in extreme poverty in 2018, and globally, there are 122 women aged 25 to 34 living in extreme poverty for every 100 men of the same age group.
What we are witnessing is vertical economic growth. What is vertical economic growth? It's the economy that is driven by few people operating on the top, and the little or not trickle-down effect. But if you have horizontal economic growth, it means so many small business players are involved. And as a result, there's a lot of trickle-down effect, and there's a lot of tax received by the government. So government can now divert a certain amount of tax it receives to help the poor.
Some of the ways the current government is addressing the challenge include the single interest loans to owners of small businesses, the Anchor Borrowers Initiative targeted at generating more income for farmers, and the National Social Investment Program.
Over 4 million Nigerians have directly benefited from job training, financial assistance, and social development through these programs.
Poverty and inequality in Nigeria, according to many, is not due to a lack of resources. Rather, it is caused by misappropriation by public officers. For instance, between 1960 and 2005, about $20 trillion was stolen from the treasury by public office holders.
Inequality, encourages, lack of productivity. Inequality, actually institutionalized poverty. Inequality also encourages conflicts. We travel everywhere in the world. We go to UK, we go to US, we go to China, we go to Asia, Africa, but you don't see the kind of, abuse of privileges that you see like the one you have in Nigeria.
Income inequality, poverty and hunger constitute a major challenge in the country, and meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals in these areas by 2030 appears even more challenging. It would require increased efforts in expanding economic opportunities for all, investing in girl-child education, as well as investing in the health and well-being of the people.
Now let's get more insight into this issue, and joining us to discuss it is an economist and former Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Dr. Chijioke Ekechukwu. Thank you very much for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
And we have only 10 years before these targets of 17 goals set by the United Nations. Do you see Nigeria achieving the 17 goals, especially looking that Millennium Goals were set and we never met that? And those reasons why we probably didn't meet those are still here with us. Do you see Nigeria meeting these goals?
When these goals were set, because we couldn't achieve the Millennium Goals, many Nigerians didn't take it seriously because we didn't see the indicators that will actually make us meet these goals as they are coming. Here we are in 2020. Poverty is still with us. Hunger is still with us. Unemployment is still with us. So we have not seen all the efforts. Yes, efforts have been made, but the efforts that could take us out of the situation today and tomorrow are not compelling enough to see us through to getting out of it. So, but it is also important for us to know that as far as there is a growth pattern and we're growing and there is a step, we always make steps forward, then we may have some hope that it may be possible. But for what we're seeing today, it doesn't look like something that is still going to be achievable.
Let's look at these statistics coming from the UNDP on poverty especially. They are staggering. Even more interesting for Nigeria is that the cause is not just social inequality amongst us, but then mismanagement of funds, especially by public officers.
That's right.
So, I mean, in the 10 years that we have left.
Yeah, when you see the level of inequality that is happening in Nigeria, and in fact in most other countries that have higher levels of inequality, you will see that something that is common in all those countries is corruption. Corruption and corruption. And with the level of corruption that we have seen in Africa and in Nigeria, you will see that inequality will continue to remain. And of course, we have seen unemployment playing out, and the percentage of unemployed Nigerians has continued to grow instead of reducing. And with that percentage growing all the time, it becomes difficult to really narrow the level of inequality in the country.
Now, if corruption is a factor like you're mentioning, doesn't the fight against corruption by this government encourage you in any way?
Yes, we can see some of the efforts made by government. But the outcome is what we have not seen eventually. efforts without outcome may not give you any good result. We are seeing the efforts, but not seeing the outcome. Because the same level of corruption we were afraid of are still facing us every day. And so until we get a good outcome of seeing a good number of Nigerians going out of corruption or seeing our system free from corruption, then we can say, yes, inequality can begin to reduce. Of course, we also see the fact that the level of cost of governance that we have always mentioned. The people in political class have excess money, and then the other people do not have that same kind of money. Then when that happens, we're bound to see the level of inequality we don't want to have.
Dr. Ikechukwu, from the point of view of an economist, tell me, is there a way we can address the inequalities?
Yes, we have ways of addressing it. First of all, we have to have our economy grow. As far as once our economy can grow up to between 5% to 6% to 7%, with the kind of population we have today, we should be able to be reducing the inequality that is happening. Today, the per capita income is low, so low because the GDP size is not as high, and the population is growing so much. So we need to reduce that. We also, like I said, we need to fight corruption. We will have to fight it head on and reduce the cost of governance in our system. Once we do this, we have to also find ways of creating entrepreneurs, many entrepreneurs amongst our youth, by training them in all the various areas of skills development. Once we do that, then a lot of people are going to be having hands-on jobs that will literally take them out of poverty.
Dr. Ikechukwu Amos, thank you very much for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Ikechukwu is an economist and former Director General of the Abuja Chambers of Commerce and Industry. And when the News at 10 returns, Minister of State for Petroleum send a new version of the Petroleum Industrial Bill to the National Assembly next week. Targets mid-2020 for passage of document. That's on Business News. Do join us again.